Today's Q&A is about induction stovetops, and the question is that the designer wants to install an induction stovetop into the home, and the question is from Kashrus' perspective: is that anything different than the gas stovetop that the people have right now? So first, we need to understand how induction stovetop works. It doesn't actually the cooktop in an induction stovetop does not get hot. Rather, when this is like, we'll call it the coil is on, it would be cold if you would touch it. And what it does is, when you put a pot which is electrically conductive and made of a ferromagnetic material, ferromagnetic means, it's a material that a magnet would stick to it. When that kind of a pot is on top of the coil and the coil is on, the pot becomes hot and the food gets cooked because the pot is hot. So even while that's going on, while the food is cooking, the coil part of it is not hot. Only the pot is hot. And the only reason the surface becomes hot is because the hot pot is sitting on top of the surface, makes the surface get hot. But there's no heat coming from the so to speak, the underside from the coil itself. No heat that you could feel coming from there itself. So this type of cooking, called induction cooking, it makes things quite complicated for a kosher home. So first let's talk about the plain kashrus starts of it. It means is that each cooktop, or each part of the cooktop, has to be either designated to be milchigs or fleishigs. That's because in a regular standard gas or electric stovetop, you're allowed to use the same burner for milchigs and fleishigs, and that's because the assumption is that as food, if food ever spills over, it gets immediately burnt up by the coil or the fire, and that fire kashers the area that's on there. And so therefore, you could use milchigs now, and in an hour from now, you could use fleishigs on the same burner, the same part of the stovetop. But for an induction stovetop, the surface never gets hot enough to do this burning and kashering, and therefore each area of the induction top has to be either for milk or for meat, but you cannot switch back and forth between them. That's from a, so to speak, plain kashrus perspective. And related to that is that there's no realistic way to kasher your induction stovetop if it became treif, or if you want to use it for Pesach. It's covered with glass, and glass cannot be kashered with hagala. Ashkenazim don't kasher glass with hagala. Well, theoretically, you could do libun kal, that's heating it with an actual torch, a fire, but it's not really possible because, for most people, putting a flame right onto the glass would crack it. In a standard glass stovetop, we do that libun kal by turning on the coils underneath it. But over here, we can't do that because if you turn on the coils, absolutely nothing happens. It doesn't get hot at all. And since the coils cannot be, since we can't kasher it, the only way to use this on Pesach would be to buy these ferromagnetic discs, the diffusers. You could buy them on Amazon all over the place. And what they do is, if you put the disc down on top of the stovetop, it will serve as a barrier between the surface and the Pesach pots. So your Pesach pot would go on top of this disc, and the disc is going on top of the glass. So the Pesach pot is never touching the glass, which is the chametz thing, and that would be okay to use. It also, induction stovetops also cause a complication for Shabbos use, because if you have your pot cooking on the induction top and you take the pot off so you can eat the food, well, when you take it off, the coil goes off because the coil, the coil becomes idle because there's no pot on top of it. So what that means is, if you leave food on the cooktop, you can't take it off on Shabbos. Obviously, you're not going to be able to eat it then. Again, you can solve this problem again by using these discs. And the idea would be is, if you put the disc down on top of the surface, the disc will from the coil's perspective, it'll be as if the fire's on all the time, because the disc will be the, so to speak, pot, and then you could put your pot on and off that disc, and the coil will keep the disc hot, but the pot will be able to be taken off. Lastly, if a person, it makes things more complicated if you want to make Bishul Yisrael, if you have non-Jewish people helping in the home. In a regular stovetop, that's gas or electric, with an electric coil, a Jewish person can turn the fire on, and that will make the food, any food that gets cooking done on the oil Bish Yisrael. Over here, turning the coil on does absolutely nothing. If there's no pot there, nothing happens. So you can't just turn on the fire in the morning. You'd have to turn it on every time you put a pot down, or put the pot down yourself, actually. That would be better. Again, unless you put the discs down and have the coils keep on all the time, the food will not be Bish Yisrael like might have been easier to do with a regular gas or electric coil.